Welcome to the Sons of Automotive podcast. Join us as we delve into the unique culture inside dealerships, explore the finance office, and cover everything from products and training to industry trends. We'll dive into cars, culture, and yes, we will mix in a bit of caffeine. Meet your hosts, Shane Vosu and Michael Offmuth.
Welcome back to Sons of Automotive podcast. We are your hosts, Shane Vosu
and Michael Offmuth.
Today we have a
Go ahead,
exciting episode lined up for you guys. We're welcoming our very first guest. Mike and I have been talking about it for a long time, but thank God we finally have the best, perfect first guest, I would say. I'll let Mike give the introductions he deserves. He's an industry leader at Alpha Warranties, and we use him quite excessively. So, Mike, take it away.
Great. Awesome. So today I am extremely excited because not only do I get to work with Matt, Shane gets to work with him. Basically, everybody in the Southwest gets to work with him. Matt Ashton is the West Coast regional manager. And maybe I'm saying it wrong. You'll have to correct me on that. With Alpha Warranty. Matt and I have worked together for going on 2 years, maybe 3.
About 2 years. Mm-hmm.
And ultimately have got to the point now where we're probably talking on a daily basis. A lot of things that are really exciting about not just at Matt, but Alpha Warranty. But today I'm going to really just get going here and say, Matt, kick it off. Tell us a little bit about your story. Tell us a little bit about your background and what led you, to the automotive space.
Well, that's awesome. Big shoes to fill with that intro. But yeah, Alpha is actually, it's a very unique company. You hear the wisp of what it's like working at Google or working at Nike. You hear company culture. And so whenever you interview, that's a big topic is what's a company culture. And I worked prior to this in the medical field, much like the automotive, you're working 24/7. It never shuts down. There's always support. And so COVID did a doozy in the medical field as well. I worked in non-essential medical field. So imagine COVID shut down and the places where we manufacture were hit heavy. And so, I've got some close friends and relatives that work at Alpha, and I've always heard of them. I've joined their Christmas parties. I've joined their events, their kind of team building, and it was a really great company on the outside looking in, but I just never thought it would pencil in. You don't ever grow up and say, Dad, what do you want to be when you get older? I want to sell automotive warranties. Like that's not something you strive for. So I've been fortunate, been at Alpha for 5 years. But Alpha as a company has been they founded in 2002. So we've been in the business for a long time. It was actually founded in a really unique way that I think set the tone for Alpha. Our current owner, Steve Rosenthal, he is in Special Force. So he is a military veteran in the Special Force, and his father, Craig Rosenthal, was a Green Beret Special Force. So he's one of those guys that is officially unofficial when it comes to that. So he's, in fact, one of his merits, he's one of those military that will jump out of an airplane 30,000 feet and land in undesignated areas. So it was very cool guy, very cool story. But as you can tell, somebody with that type of personality, once you retire, you can't sit still. That's the constant drive, that constant wanting to be the best. And so he started working for a admin company based out of Idaho. And so Idaho then and Idaho now are two different states. Way back when, you didn't have to be clipped. And what that basically means, it's a fancy term. If something ever happens, there's somebody going to be behind that covering any of those policies in the event that that company goes under. And so that Idaho, you didn't have to be clipped. And so Craig worked for an admin company. And one day the owner just took all the premium, jetted off and said, sayonara. Wow. And so really, Craig, being a man of his word, had all these dealerships and, they're calling him, what's going on? No one's answering their phones. And so Craig, wanting to be a man of his word and kind of stand behind that and choose people over profit, reached out to his son, Steve Rosenthal, who is now our current CEO. They used his GI money and barely made it, because you think early 2000s, we had that financial crash in 2008 and set kind of a COVID, what COVID is now was the 2008 crisis back then. And so Alpha just, I think, doing the right thing, standing behind what they said they were going to do, set them off. And we are now the largest privately held company in the U.S. and we operate in all 50 states. And so I'm proud to say that I work for Alpha. It's a company that I will never leave. I'm going to hang my hat there, and it's a really awesome culture. If you ever come to our building and meet our team, you'll know exactly what I'm talking.
That's very cool. Now, I want to rewind a little bit because you just gave us a ton of information. That's awesome. What would you say is like what pulled you to the automotive industry then? Based on what you were talking about COVID. Was it just an automatic that you were going to go into automotive from that point forward, or was it?
No, it's my very first real job. Obviously, Taco Bell and McDonald's doesn't count when you're 16. We're talking real job. Is I worked at a dealership. That was my first real job, and I worked into the detail center. I did. It was called Touch a Class, Sealajet, Permaplate, Xylon. Basically, I did the environmental interior and exterior for all the sales. And so that was kind of my first job in there. And I wanted to work my way up into a sales position. And so that was kind of my first touch into it. I never quite got to sales because I kind of found out quickly that time was a big factor in the automotive space. And I was young, I was in school and couldn't dedicate enough time to do that. But that's when I first kind of got touched in the automotive space. And then without aging myself, Fast and the Furious came out and
game over.
I just could not help myself not souping up a car and getting in and wrenching and modifying vehicles. So I've always had a fascination in the automotive space, whether it was Dom or it was me, my first job. One of those two would probably have a big key of pushing me back into the automotive market.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I can't say that you're alone on that one. It seems like when Fast and Furious came out, everyone was trying to drive under semi trucks and save semis full of TVs and VCRs. Yeah, can't say I was not one of those.
Yeah, at least what's nice, I guess you really don't age yourself. I have no idea what Fast and Furious is out right now, 10, 20, 30. So at least, yeah, they won't know if it was early 2000s or early 2020s. We won't put a number
on there to hide the age a little bit. Yeah.
Just a couple of them.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So you mentioned a lot of things about Alpha Warranty. You talked about the facility, you talked about the size of the company, you talked about having family there, you talk about culture. What do you think is like what drove you to go to Alpha Warranty? What do you think was like the thing that made the most sense? And I'm intrigued by this because you didn't come from, directly from automotive, right? You came from medical. So making that transition, that leap, that jump, I related to myself of like coming from the dealership world, going into the vendor side, right? It's a jump, you're changing gears, right? You're going a different direction. So I'm curious what sparked that for you.
Yeah. So sales is sales. So you understand art of discovery. You understand kind of where people are at in their buying process. It's pretty much the same conversation. I will say, talking to an automotive dealer principal and talking to a doctor, breath of fresh air. I won't say one is not more challenging to the other because they both are very, very tough. The only thing we don't have to run into is some of that compliancy stuff. But I think having that knowledge to be able to have a very in-depth, logical conversation with a doctor, having that same conversation with a dealership or a principal owner, it's all the same. You want to grow, you want to, set yourself out. You want to build a brand. You want to build something, a legacy. So it's the same difference, whether you go to school for 12, 15 years to become a doctor, or whether you start at 18 as a lot tech, work your way up in the finance, a GSM, a GM, and finally owning your space. I think that same drive is there. And whether you did it for 12 years in school or you did it 12 years with sweat equity, I think that translated well for me. And then I was very fortunate. My first job in Alpha Warranty was doing exactly what you did, Michael, is I was an agent. So I just worked here in Utah, working with dealerships directly. So I got to get my feet wet without kind of getting baptized by fire.
Got
Gotcha.
it. And then, so obviously, when you decided to kind of join that side, that the warranty back end space, did you compare and contrast other companies to work for, or was it like, I'm dead set, this is the company I want to work for?
That's a great question. That I started obviously with Alpha because that's kind of what I knew. But once you get about a year or two into this, and this I think goes along with anybody in the agency world, when you get your feet wet, you got to partner with somebody. If you're putting a lot of your eggs in a basket, you have to partner with somebody that has your back, will do what they say they'll do. And so Alpha was kind of a safe space. But as you kind of grow, Alpha doesn't do it all. There's a million other opportunities and needs into dealerships. And so when I started probing and prying and kind of answering and asking, who else is out there, I was actually surprisingly shocked that Alpha has a really unique secret sauce that not a lot of companies understand. And it's now unfortunate as these large conglomerate companies are now kind of acquiring smaller admins and putting them under that big umbrella, you lose what made you special and you then become a number and a digit. And I find that from when I first started, even 5 years ago to now, there's a lot of companies that are just getting swallowed up, and it's not a bad thing. It's great for sustainability, and there is that need in the market. But I think for most dealership principals, I stuck and stayed with Alpha because who we are at a core, that secret sauce, it's hard to find out there in the industry. There's only a select few companies that specialize in certain categories into our market space, and Alpha is great at that specialty risk, which is in here in Utah, lifted trucks, deletes, branded titles. I mean, you name it, we do it here in Utah, and so we've been very successful because of we can offer what most can't.
That's awesome. Yeah. It's always crazy to see on a dealer side. I work with a few different companies about how many restrictions there are or how many loopholes people have to go through. And that's just the company you don't want to work for. If they say they're going to do this, they're going to cover that, you expect it if that does come up. And that's huge. And then being able to, when I talk to Mike and, hey, I have this problem, I know he's going to talk to somebody who's all like-minded and we're all going to work together to at least find a solution. And that's huge, at least on my side of the desk. So that's one of the biggest reasons why we are in love with Alpha.
I'll speak to that too. The thing that is for me, like for the agency, like when it comes to Amelia and I, when we pick an administrator or a company that we want to work with, Matt, you probably remember this. You reached out to me a couple of years back, and again, I apologize, I don't remember the exact time, but we were trying to form a relationship, right? And Matt was asking, how do we work with your agency? And I was like, the big things for me again are like administration, how you guys take care of a dealer, and then again, support, right? Support is the key word for me. Like, how do you help me help my dealer, right? Not the Jerry Maguire moment here, but basically, realize that like we're going to get in situations that we don't even intend on getting in, right? We're going to go out and try to make relationships and do things for dealerships, and things pop up. There could be a vehicle sold and 2 days later it's got a transmission problem, or whatever the case may be. But there's going to be unique situations, and what you touched on, Matt, I think is key. This is something that I think really makes Alpha unique and distinguishes you against other administrators out there. And that is, when these problems happen, it's not just a blanket, big box answer. It's not, I'm sorry, it's a pre-existing condition. I'm sorry, it's a turn down because of X, Y, or Z. It's, let's figure out a solution for the dealership. Let's figure out what we can do here to help somebody. And it gets back to that relationship and that support. And to me, that's what I think Alpha really is down to its core. And, you touched on this in the very beginning. You talked about the history of Steve and his father, and, how they started in basically my space as agents, right? And got put into a situation that, if you think about it, was a really shitty situation, right? They had a warranty company that didn't have the insurance clip, didn't have the correct policy basically behind it. And so when this company folded up, they got to experience kind of probably the scariest situation of all scary situations, like dealerships calling them on claims and things happening where, oh my God, this company's out of business. What do we do? And they came up with a really cool solution to help their dealerships, which is, what evolved and what transformed into Alpha Warranty and what it is today. And I think, I've talked to you and several people inside of Alpha Warranty and talked about, what that started like and what claims was. Like people told me when Alpha first started, they were adjudicating claims out of the trunk of a car, right? And to look at what Alpha is now, right? To look at what like it's turned into and the facility that you guys have, the team that you have, the culture that you created, kudos to you, kudos to your team, kudos like for the company. I think it's amazing. And that's, I was talking to Shane. One of the reasons I'm super excited to have you on here today is that all that matters, right? Like as an agency, like as I go out there, I know I'm one of multiple people that offer products, right? When I go into a dealership, it's me against, a couple different people going in the store, even that week sometimes. What makes us unique? What makes us different? And the trick to that is, as an agent, is to A, support, right? To make sure you're there for a dealership when they have a problem, but B, partner with people that are going to answer their phone and figure out a solution. And so I think that is, you touched on a lot of this like right now, but I think that's huge. Right. And I think that's a big part of who Alpha Warranty really is, unless you tell me I'm wrong. You know what I mean? But
that's our secret sauce. As crazy as it sounds. And we just got back every year. There's a meeting where a lot of agents get together and all the top companies will get in and kind of meet the agents, what's new in the industry. And kind of the running joke was who got acquired by whom, who got bought out, who's kind of now moved over here. I'm the same person with a new name badge. And what's crazy to think is there's still, of all those large companies that within there, I would say there's probably 3 or 4 that have a unique niche or ability to do something that's outside the box. And as much as I would love to take credit for Alpha's secret sauce, I mean, truly, you just do right by the people. If you come into our building, we have a motto: act as if it's your agency to lose or grow, and it's your dealership to grow. Like we want to truly, if we make every decisions, we can't say yes to everything. It's, we're an insured product. Compliancy means we can't. Me in sales, I'd love to say yes to everything because I look at the big picture, but obviously we've got departments within Alpha that mitigate that risk. But if you look at the big picture and it's like, is this covered? Yes or no? If it's not, how do we find to where the consumer understands the why behind the no? How does the dealership understand the why behind the no? And is there something we can do to where the next time that customer buys a service contract, they're going to go, you know what? I had a great experience with Alpha. I would love to buy another service contract. And that's what we look at as an admin is we're already in a rough market. Think of high risk, high mile vehicles, diesels and Europeans and high mile vehicles. That's a market space that nobody likes. But because we've mastered that market space and that understanding, I think it gives us that competitive advantage against our competition because we know how to deal with the bad stuff. Give me a brand new Honda or Toyota Corolla, you'll never have a problem. So.
All right. Now, Shane, let me ask you a quick question. If a customer buys a service contract, right, and let's say they leave and a year later they go to use it and it doesn't work, right? They have a bad experience. The company doesn't cover, a major component or whatever is going on. What are the odds that A, that customer is going to come back to the dealership and buy another vehicle, or B, buy another service contract when that day does come, in the future?
Oh yeah, I mean, you're like how it is with you guys. Our word here is our bond. When we sell a service contractor and we tell them, okay, these are things that are going to be covered. They trust in that. And, we're in the used car market, so used cars are always kind of leery, and people kind of get worried about it. So peace of mind goes a long way. So when that peace of mind comes up to be nothing, it almost feels like they get cheated. And I believe that's a true thing. I know of a dealer who kind of has newer units, and they have like the pre-existing factory powertrain warranties on it. But when they offer a warranty to a customer, they offer a powertrain warranty. There has to be something to make the customer feel like they're protected, they're taken care of, and they're benefiting from it. And if you can't offer those things, I don't think you should be selling it. But to sell something to somebody and say, hey, you're going to be covered, and then down the road, if they need it and they try it, they're not going to come back. They're going to think that, whether it was the dealership or the product, someone cheated somebody. And it's just going to leave a bad experience with the company, the dealership, with F&I product. And it's just bad business. I mean, like Matt was saying, at least in this dealership here, and I feel like, there's quite a bit of them. We all try to treat our customers as if they're our own family members, and if we were on the other side of the desk. So that's what's the biggest thing with dealing with Mike. He came in and analyzed my inventory, knew what kind of products I needed. He wasn't just like, hey, here's a couple products you might be able to use. He says, well, I know your inventory and this is what you should be using. And this is why. And that was like, hey, he cares. He thought about it. And then when Alpha came around, dealing with Alpha and the reps there, it was the same process. So I feel like it runs from the F&I product to the agent, to the F&I manager, and then to the customer. And if anywhere in that line there's something off, the rest of it downhill is just not going to work. And then that's your reputation on the line. So, reviews here are huge. We're in Tucson, so we're like a big little town, and word of mouth is probably the strongest form of advertisement. So if you offer something that's not going to offer the customer something, or you promise something you can't deliver on, it's going to hurt you in ways you didn't expect. So that's huge for us.
Right. Now, going back to Alpha for a second, Matt, I know the answer to this because it's part of the training when I go in with a finance manager, but I give you guys a lot of credit. You know what your reviews look like right now on Google. Okay. So, again, as a service contract, as a warranty company, right, as a whole, you got to think about most people when they're writing a review is typically when they've had a bad experience, right? They're not going to go get something fixed on their vehicle and be like, oh, my service contract did a good job. And, most of those people aren't going to go write a review. And with that in mind, you guys still have an excellent rating with, Google when it comes down to what your reputation looks like. And so again, when you talk about, support and taking care of a dealership and taking care of a customer, like what Shane says, looking at a customer of like, hey, this is our family, right? Like treat every situation like it's something that, it's not just our reputation, but it's, taking care of people. You guys have that, and it's evident just in the fact that you have thousands of reviews. And I don't know the exact number, but it's impressive because like, as I'm sitting across from a finance manager and they're talking about, especially sometimes you get somebody that you go in the box and like, you sit down with somebody and they're excited. Some people are good energy and you can tell they're just doing a great job and they believe in a product. Sometimes they're not, right? Sometimes they came from an environment that, maybe it wasn't a great company. Maybe it was a bad experience or something that happened in themselves or their family. And so you have to like rebuild that trust. And like, for me, it's so easy because I can go, hey, I want to show you something before we even get into the products, before I even talk about what it's going to cover, before I even show you the reasons I love this company. Let me show you what other people are saying about it, right? That word of mouth, that referral that's coming from Google, which all of us look at, right? Like a lot of us will go down and start looking at a couple reviews, right? I am included because I'll be like, I want to read a couple good ones. I want to read a couple bad ones. And I'll give you a perfect example. Traveling all the time, I'm going to hotels. I want to see what the negative is before I go stay at a hotel, right? I'm that guy. I need to know that if there's something gross there, I don't want to stay at that property, right? But, same thing is true with the service contract. When I have customers sitting across from me and I'm sitting with a finance manager explaining, Alpha Warranty or the service contract or what it covers, the number of times that a customer gets their phone out or a spouse gets their phone out and I catch them, they're Googling the company, right? They're trying to see, hey, is this a junk product that this person's selling me? And how cool is that your reputation of a company that, again, you have to think that most people that are going to write a review is going to be in a bad situation is, excellent. And I don't know the exact number. I'll let you touch on that in a second. But one of the things I wanted to ask you is, and I know this, like, because I've been to your facility and I've seen your claims process and I've seen some of the things that you do, but what are some of the things that you guys incorporate through claims or through that experience for a customer? Obviously, if it's like, hey, we're approving your claim, that's a pretty easy experience for a customer. But let's say it's not. Let's say it's, hey, this customer is not getting something approved. They have a powertrain coverage and, they're calling in, just the most obvious example, let's say it's a navigation system or something that wouldn't be covered. How does your claims team handle that? And then how do you guys oversee that experience and process?
Right. That's part of the secret sauce. And as much as, it's not a secret out there, it truly is, because that's what's lost, I think, in most of the admin space. And admin, we call ourselves an admin because we truly are just an administrator. We don't sell a product, we sell a service. And so we're only as good as that piece of paper and when that paper is used. And so one of the issues and hardest things that almost all admin companies run into is we don't control what's sold. We only have to control what is told to us when we make a decision. So a dealership may sell a powertrain and unfortunately tell the customer that it's a bumper to bumper warranty, or the dealership sells that and maybe sells the best coverage, but then they take it to John's garage and outdoor excursions where they maybe don't focus and they may not be ASC certified or master techs, but they're out in the middle of nowhere. This is the best place that they can get the car fixed. And sometimes we don't get the proper or correct information to make that decision. So there's a lot of variables that we run into, and as an administrator right off the start. But our goal is when we make that decision, you have to trust that decision. If you are the dealership, the agent, and the customer, if you don't trust how we got to that decision, then this process is completely broken. There's no trust in that process. And so I think what Alpha does so well is we explain to the consumer the ins, the outs. We're very transparent, where as the consumer, we have a tool called Claims Tracker, and they're automatically updated as if they're ordering Uber Eats or they're ordering Domino's Pizza. This is where we're at. Here's what the repair facility said. Here's what the customer said. Here's what Alpha said. Here's what we're waiting on. Same to the dealer. We give the dealership and our agents those tools so they know what's going on, when's going on, and it's completely automated so everybody's on the same page. And I think that transparency of here's what's going on, this is what is covered, this is what isn't covered, and here's the why. They may not be excited about that denial, but at least they understand, and everybody gets a review, whether we've approved the claim, denied the claim, or even partially approved. Everybody gets that survey. And so what I tell everybody is go to the 1 stars. Don't look at our 4 stars. Don't look at our 5 stars. Go to our 1 stars, and you'll actually see that we will advocate for the consumer. We're human. We adjudicate all of our claims here on 11 in South Jordan, 11456 South Temple Drive. We're based here in Utah. We've got ASC certified technicians. We've got master technicians that may be on their second knee replacement or their second hip, and they're tired of crawling under cars, but they love the car space. They love that jargon and that lingo. And so we've got very qualified staff, but we are human. And so we sometimes mistakes do get made. And I think that's where we shine. If we make a mistake, we'll own it. We will put it out there. We'll own it to the dealership. We'll own it to the agent, and we'll make sure to take care of it and to move forward and correct that internally so that it doesn't happen.
Now, when you guys in the claims process have a customer that calls in, let's say, I'm sure you have customers that are upset, right? Or angry, or they call in agitated. What are some of the things that you guys do different in that scenario?
Ooh, starting to get into some of the secret sauce here. Michael's been on some of our tours in our building. Well, it's something we want to be public. I think if you better the automotive space, you better that just the stigma that is in our market, I think it's going to be better for everybody. And so as much as I'd love to try to keep it our secret sauce, I know there's not another Alpha out there. So I'm so happy to share that we do some very unique and some proprietary things behind the scenes. And one of them is we have an AI system. And so our AI on the phone live, when somebody's calling, there's certain words, tone fluctuations, word tracks that if the consumer starts going down one way, it'll flip a switch and notate whether a green smiley face, yellow smiley face, red smiley face. So it's very simple. But if it starts to turn yellow, our team leads will come on and we can whisper and message, hey, take the call down this way or take the call back that way, or maybe help them out to get them where they need to go. If it continues to go bad, they'll commandeer that phone call, jump on, and ensure that it ends in a positive note. So there's some really unique things that we do. Our building, our space, we've got quiet rooms. I've listened to some phone calls where you've get called so many 4-letter words that I'm even shocked that someone can string that many together and still make sense. And so again, we're human, and so we want you to be able to jump on that next phone call and with a smile and take care of that customer, because when you use our service, it's a bad day. Your car broke down, you're stranded, your livelihood to point A to point B. And so we want to ensure that we have those space that they can at any moment log out, go into the quiet room, take as much time as they want. And we've got this amazing facility where they can go downstairs into a game room, a bowling alley, and just like release that stress. So the next time that they're on their call and they feel that next phone call, they're going to answer it as if they're talking to their mom or if they're talking to their spouse. So I think that's just some unique things that we do and hire the best employees and have happy employees. If you go look at all of our awards and accolades, one of my favorite is we're one of the top places to work in Utah. Go to our Glassdoor reviews. Google, the reviews can be altered. We stand by all of our reviews, good, bad, the ugly, our Trust Pilot. But if you go to the Glassdoor reviews, if you got a bad work environment, they're going to lay it out there on the line and you can't hide behind that. And so there's a lot of companies out there that will pay for reviews or buy reviews. So I just say, go to the Glassdoor, see what employees say about the company, because that's going to truly tell you what type of work environment and culture it is. And Alpha's, every single year, we are one of the top workplaces to work here in Utah. And we compete with Purple, Mattress, Adobe's here. We have, it's called Silicon Slopes. So you have Silicon Valley in California with the tech. Here in Utah, you have Silicon Slopes. And we compete with those massive tech companies, and we're still one of the best places to work here in Utah. So without giving all our secret sauce,
I wasn't going to dig too deep there, but
that's
I was
a good
going
amount. But again, I welcome it, because any other companies, they don't have the Darrens, they don't have the Jeremys, they don't have the Matthews, they don't have the leadership that we have, the support that we have. And so I welcome anybody trying to mirror Alpha, because at the very worst, it's just going to better our industry.
I love
Mike,
that.
so talking about talking about trust and branding and reputation and all that. And you obviously, as an agent, you look for companies you trust. You look for the culture that you want to represent and brand your name with. So from that transition, how is you as an agent, how do you go into a dealership and decide whether or not you want that dealership to represent you and Alpha? Because there's a lot of dealerships, unfortunately, that are out there that are saying, like Matt said, oh, we're going to offer this, but it's not really that, or overcharging, or selling something that the customer might not even really need, just to kind of make an upsell. So what's your process going into a dealership, knowing that that's how Alpha works, that's what you believe in, and now you have to trust the dealer that they're going to be ethical, they're going to represent the brand? Like, what's that process going into it?
So this is something we actually touch on. We do a weekly call now with our entire team. And as we get on the phone, we're talking about different experiences that are happening inside of a dealership and what we're identifying as we go inside some stores. And it's not one thing or another, right? It's a combination of things that we pay attention to. So I always talk about, as we are an agency, how do we build value inside a dealership? Right now, other agents, like I said, if we go in a store, it's safe to say that they've had other agents in that store, if not that week, within a couple of weeks time frame. Our competition is constantly going in. And I think a big, huge mistake that a lot of agents do, right, is they go in and they try to build value based on price, right? So they go in there and say, hey, my service contract is less expensive than this guy, or my contract will save you $50 a contract. And they try to make that their value proposition when they're talking to a dealership. And so I think a lot of times when we are in a store, I tell my agents, identify if that's what a dealer is really after, right? Because if a dealer's like, hey, look, if you're $50 cheaper than the guy I've been using for 3 years, we'll switch to you. I'm not really excited about that, right? Like, I'm not trying to get that business. Not that I'm saying it's not like I don't want to sign and work with as many dealerships as possible, but I don't want the dealership who values the least expensive service contract. I want the dealership that values somebody that's going to support them, that's going to train their staff, that's going to come in and bring them a product that is going to stand tall when it needs to stand tall. And that's the most important thing for me, honestly, because like, as we continue growing, right, and we continue bringing on new dealerships and we continue bringing on hopefully more agents and more people, like, and we start creating a similar culture to what Alpha has created, right? Like, we want to create something where people are excited to work with us, that they don't want to leave. They love like what they're a part of. Right. And part of that is, again, picking the dealerships that we get to work with, because I've gone into stores with some of my guys, because that's part of my role now is I travel across the country and I go marketing with parts of my team, and we'll go into different dealerships and somebody will leave one and be like, oh, I think we can get some business out of them. They told us if we do this, this, and this, we can maybe do something. I'm not interested in that. Like, I mean, like, I'll go into some dealerships where they got 4 different service contract companies and I can be number 5, right, on the shelf. And I'm just not interested in that relationship, right? Because they might sell 1 or 2 contracts from me, or 1 or 2 from the next guy and the next guy and the next guy, but they have no real loyalty and no real trust or anything that they're building with one company. And again, like, I don't get real excited about that relationship. I get excited about having a relationship where they're like, hey, we're gonna work with you because you take care of us. And if your service contract this time is $50 more expensive or $50 less on this car, we don't care. We know that it's fairly priced, right? And ultimately, they're going to take care of us when a problem comes up. And so that's really like where we try to have our mindset when we're looking at dealerships, is not to exclude anyone in particular, right? Like we're not trying to go out and say, oh, they sell this type of cars, we're not going to work with them, or they only focus on high mileage. That's not at all what we're after. We'll work with anybody, like regardless of like the inventory that they're selling and how they approach the business. But I just want to make sure that they're ethical, right? They do a good job. They service their inventory. They don't go out there and do something intentionally to fraud or harm a customer. And they have one mindset, and that is growth, right? I want to chase people that align with me in the sense that they want to grow and become bigger, better versions of what they are today. And I think that's not just on the dealer side, but on the admin side as well. And, the biggest thing you can do is look at a dealership, look at an admin company, and what are we measuring, right? We're measuring how many units we sold, or how many contracts we sold, or what we're doing. And all of us get excited about that, right? It's the same thing as sports. Like you don't go watch a sporting game or a sporting event and be like, what was the score? Oh, I don't know. I didn't really care about this. I just wanted to watch the teams, right? Everybody wants to win. They want to be something that's part of like, doing something better than they were, the day before, or, beating their competition, whatever the case may be. That's where I plug in well with dealerships and admins. And that is, why I align so well with Matt at Alpha, because, and I'll let him tell you, like, we've been focused on it, right? Our agency is like trying to climb the ladder and become, a premier partner with their company. And it's hard, right? Like continuous growth is not an easy thing to do. It's, you're constantly evolving and changing, and the business around us is evolving and changing. And I know I'm giving you a long-winded answer to your question here, but like, it can transition into not just me, but it's like, you think about how Alpha picks an agent, how an agent picks a dealer. Like all of us can have a different narrative to talk about here. And with that, I'll transition to you, Matt. Like, what do you guys look for, when it comes to an agent partner or an agency or somebody, and then take it a step further. What do you look for in a dealership, right? Like, what is a good dealer partner for you, and what is a bad one? And when, I'm sure it happens, right? Like at what point do you have to make a hard decision and say, hey, we're going to have to part ways at this point?
Yeah. So I don't know if it's something in the air or if it's that time of year, but over this past month, I've probably got every week an inquiry to become an agent of Alpha. A lot of the times they'll either run into us and have the motto, and I try to check, it's right. I'd rather join you than compete against you. And that's, as for me, and I've done this well with Michael's, I'm not looking for that. I don't want 100 agents doing 100 contracts a month. 10,000 contracts a month is great, but I would truly rather have 5 or 10 agents that are giving me 70,000 contracts a month, because we could truly build something together. I don't need all your eggs put into my basket, but we both need enough to where we need each other equally the same, and to where we understand the big picture, the long term, to where we can build a sustainable business model. You can't build one for short-term goals and short, fast dollars. It doesn't work or operate that way. And I myself and Alpha's growth, we're built on, we have a specific metric. We want to hit these targets. Who are the agencies out there going to do that? And year after year, it's Elite FI is the agency where I'm now pushing them into other regions. They're growing into other areas in the Midwest and now into the East Coast. And so it's very instrumental. In fact, I think today our RSM for the Midwest is running around with one of your new sub agents as we speak. And it's that level of support to where I know Michael's team is going to push, but I know my team is also going to be pushing with him. So we can have that sustainability growth, and we can at least put metrics together and smart goals that are easily attainable, because everybody is on the same page. So for an agency, it's that I need somebody that isn't complacent, because unfortunately in our market space, you get a couple hundred, dealerships, and you get enough contract count that agents can become complacent. And unfortunately, in my job, in my role, I need to find those that want to grow. And I have yet to see an inch or an inkling of complacency from Elite FI. And that's something I want to throw every single resource that I have behind, because they're going to grow and continue. And so that's specifically what we look for, is a culture, a good vibe. In fact, I joke with all of my team, would you want to sit in a car for 2 hours with that agent? If the answer is yes, then a dealership would like to do the same. If the answer is no, I could promise you that dealership feels exactly the same way every time that person comes in. They may be polite and kick them out, but or maybe chat with them, but that's how we realign, where we can just put it down to very basic. Do you like them? Can you hang out them? Can you build a successful business model around it? Because we are in a space where there's times where we're driving from Tucson to Phoenix. That's a couple hours in a car. That could be a very long car ride if you just don't mesh and vibe. And I feel like that just translates very well. If I have a personality that get well with Michael, I know Shane, we've met twice, and I'm sure without skipping a beat, we can go work out, go have a meal, go hang out, and it's like we have the same mindset, the same business model of wanting to grow. So for the agency side, that's a very specific. And then the dealership side, Michael, you actually touched on this because we get this a lot. We'll have an agency with a massive book of business. They maybe have, let's say, 100, 200, 300 dealerships with us, but they always have 3, maybe 5 dealerships that are just operating poorly. And so the way that I look at it is, if I lose this dealership, does it do anything to me? Probably not. It's a drop in the bucket. It really doesn't do anything. But if my agent loses that dealership, how will that affect him? And that's probably going to affect him more. We're a larger company. We're massive. If a dealership's doing 10 or 15 contracts a month, if I lose them the next month, I know because of my metrics in my system, but I won't feel that revenue loss. But an agent may. 15 contracts a month or 20 contracts a month may be enough to where I look at the big picture. How is my partnership? How is my agency doing? What is my relationship with that agency? Can I absorb 3, 4, 5 bad dealers? Absolutely. To me, it's not worth that shake. So where we won't say no to dealerships, obviously, if the ship is so far upside down, we may have to talk about discussing what premium looks like and how we can right the ship. But for the most part, if we're out cold calling with the agencies, I trust every agency that I work with that if they sign a dealership, I know that it means something to them, so it means something to me. So I truly don't police it on the dealership level because I get it on the agencies. You get good agents, you get good partners. You don't have to worry about your livelihood because I already know they worry about theirs and I don't have to police them.
Gotcha. That's awesome. Now, shifting gears on you here a little bit, let's talk about products. Right now, you guys in the last year and a half or so have actually really like stirred up the pot a little bit and come up with some really creative stuff. I mean, obviously, I'm attracted to it. I go out there and put it in front of a lot of dealerships. I see a lot of value in the stuff that we're pushing out there in regards to the product lineup. What are some of your favorite products or things that you think, again, back to secret sauce, right? But like, what do you feel like is like really driving right now or pushing the boat forward for Alpha?
Yeah, so a lot of it I find it's going to be kind of like what Shane talked about earlier is you've got to really analyze the market space, analyze the inventory, and why you and him mesh so well is to understand really what's out there in the market. And I think COVID really flipped that upside down with that inventory and the pricing and such. And so what most companies did is they batten down the hatches. They're holding on tight. We don't know the uncertainty. And what Alpha did is, well, Michael, what do you need? What is out there? What could you get there to grow? And so we designed 2 programs that we launched 2 years ago. So just coming out of the pandemic for 2022, we're designing these programs pretty much in the middle of the pandemic. And then we launch in 2023 on 3 programs that specifically targeted 2 parts of the market that we found was the biggest need. And one was called Budget Care. And it's exactly what it sounds. It's a budget friendly product. So that way the dealer can get something on there for the back end, but then also truly protect the consumer. And that was the biggest thing is there still has to be value. We call it sellable and financeable. You got to be able to sell it to the consumer. There's got to be value and it has to be financeable. You had to fit it into loans that were just extremely tight where callbacks were unheard of. LTVs were getting maxed out. And so if we want to grow and you want to grow and the dealerships want to grow, you have to adapt. And to where I think where most companies drop the ball is they didn't adapt early enough where we did. And so we were able to put together a really budget conscious product But still, if you look at the nuts and bolts to it, it's one of the few powertrains out there in the market that you can get a powertrain plus with NADA limits of liability. We found in our market space, everybody's capping 1,500, 2,000, 2,500. COVID, try to find an engine or a transmission for $2,200 or $2,500. It's impossible. You can't. And so that was one of the biggest pain points is, yes, the consumer buys this, but then still has the same out-of-pocket cost as what this cost him. And so he's just hedging that I'm going to get 50% of my cost when my car fails. I'm at least going to get covered 50%. And again, as a consumer and doing the right thing for the customers, that's a horrible way to build a business model to cut pricing. And so we came out with budget care, and it was a really big godsend, especially in that market where the demographic, where that dollar has to be stretched sometimes a couple of weeks until that next paycheck comes in. And so we understood that and came out with budget care. Then the second program that I kind of liked was IntelliCare, which was basically my bread and butter. I will put it up against anybody in the world. And we took an exclusionary coverage and truly shortened what was listed for the exclusionary side. We wanted to shorten that list of what was excluded, and specifically more to the point of covering things that we know. What do people complain about? And there was very specific components like a transmission solenoid. It's not internally lubricated, but if that thing fails, that transmission goes. Carbon buildup or burnt and collapsed piston rings. I can't tell you how many denied engine claims because I'm sorry, there's carbon buildup. It's used cars.
Yeah.
Of course there's carbon buildup. We're in the used car market space. Like it's just admin companies found that's their gray area. That's kind of their out. That's their way to deny the claim. But if you're a good selling dealer, a good selling agent, maybe they push it through, maybe they don't. With Alpha, you could be selling one contract a month, or you could be selling 1,000 contracts a month. You get that same value in that verbiage of the contract, because let's just remove that out of there. Let's not put that lingo in there to where it puts us in a bad position. And then Arizona is not as bad, but California is highly regulated. And when you buy a vehicle in California, especially a used one, you have to get it safety and emission almost every single year. The consumer buys a service contract, a check engine light comes on, and it's an emissions component, and you're telling me they're completely out? Like, sorry, we don't want to cover all the emissions components, to where, an O2 sensor is a couple $100 for the part and labor. And it's like, why can't we put something together to cover that, but then also cover DEF systems, particulate filters, some of those high dollar amounts that if that stuff fails, it might as well be catastrophic for the consumer. So we added stuff like that. Wearables is another thing. Everybody says, oh, everything's covered except belts, hoses, clamps, plastic, glass, basically the wearable items. Well, sometimes those wearable items, if they fail, it's going to cause catastrophic failure. And then now that we're back to square one, we wanted to add truly an experience for the consumer. If it was a problem for them, it's a problem for us. And I think that's where Alpha truly hit it out of the park, is we planned ahead and just asked what the consumer wants. And surprisingly, the consumer's happy, the dealer's happy, the dealer's happy, Michael's happy. And if Michael's happy, I'm happy. We don't have to, you don't call Michael, Michael doesn't call me. We just eliminate that in the beginning and just offer that type of coverage standard built into our products.
Well, a lot of dealerships that, I work with, and Shane, you're one of them, right? Like you look at exclusionary coverage as like your go-to. You want to give the best product that you can to a customer. And what I love about IntelliCare, right, is that there's a lot of exclusionary coverages out there. But what makes you different is that you include more items of coverage that most people do exclude, right? We just assume that all exclusionaries are created equal, and that's nothing further from the truth. I was reading in this, I'm that nerd that goes through and reads these contracts from all the competitors out there and all the things that are covered or not covered. And I was going through one contract today of a company, and they exclude almost every electrical component on an exclusionary contract. So navigation systems like road, the lane departure sensors, all the stuff that is like just kind of common now in a vehicle or a newer vehicle, they're excluding it. And so really their exclusionary contract is not that good when it comes down to it, because most of these cars nowadays are just a connection of computers, right? All the computers working together, whether it be your navigation system, something guiding the vehicle, steering the vehicle, or it's an electric vehicle to start out with, right? You guys built the contracts, and not only are we covering these type of components, but then there's things that are typically not covered that you are, and you touched on it, right? So an EV, let's talk about a Tesla. what's most important to most people that are buying a Tesla is the battery. Now with IntelliCare, that's not even a surcharge. That's just covered, right? And so that to me is huge. You talk about emissions components. You talk about something that's typically not covered in my eyes. It's going to be your catalytic converter, right? Most service contracts, like it's not even like a question. Yeah, no, that's not covered. Hey, we can offer that coverage with IntelliCare. That's unique. That's cool. That's awesome. We get into wearables. You talk about manual clutches, right? Things that are typically very much excluded, right? If you have somebody that's driving a stick shift and they burn out a clutch, typically not something we're even going to have a conversation.
Ford and their Fiesta, their internally lubricated, non-internally lubricated transmission. Yeah, Ford dropped the ball on that one. But yeah, to not cut you off, and I apologize. But that was really it. We wanted to make it very simple, and we're already enhancing. And probably this year we're going to launch a couple of new products because again, our agents ask for, hey Matt, this is what I'm feeling in the market. We're going to launch 3 products this year. 2 of them are going to be enhancements, and one of them is going to be like a powertrain plus plus, to where if you do have those dealerships that are offering a powertrain and we can't control what's getting sold, can we at least put the components that need to get covered on that powertrain and that powertrain plus plus, where we're getting those electricals, we're getting, heater cores and radiators and alternators, things that sometimes get missed on the verbiage of that contract, but then also price it in the way that if you're looking at our powertrain and our powertrain plus plus and we're only off by a couple of $100, can I sell that value to you to please check the powertrain plus plus coverage? Because what's it going to do for your brand? What's it going to do for the consumer? How is it going to better and so it's going to hopefully guide those dealerships that are only price driven, where I can sell them on, look at your brand, look at the longitude of your dealership, and do you want to be gone in the next COVID 3.0 or 5.0, or do you want to be able to make it past that? And so to your test, Michael, yeah, we've got a couple of things we're going to launch this year that I think is going to further that gap that our dealerships and agents need.
Yeah, that's. I mean, I think for any company is you got to constantly be innovating in order to stay ahead of the curve. Shane and I have talked about this in the past and things that he's done. Even on this podcast, we talked about it. To stand out or distinguish himself as a dealer and versus competitors or different people in his space. I feel like as an agent, I have to do the same thing, right? Like, how do I go into a dealership and stand tall or be better than a competitor or somebody that's offering a similar service? As an administrator, this is, I think, one of the reasons I'm super excited about it is that we have 3 different points of view in this episode, right? We have the dealer, we have the agent, we have the administrator, on this conversation, but we all look at some things almost identical, right? We all look at how do we innovate? How do we stay ahead? How do we stay open, right? How do we make sure that our customers want to do business with us? And it kind of comes back to the same thing, support, culture, right? Obviously, technology is a big piece of things, right? Like you got to make sure that you're constantly innovating and staying ahead of the curve. But I think it's very much the same answer for all of us. I mean, Shane, correct me if I'm wrong, but inside your dealership, like you're constantly looking for the tools or the things that keep you kind of ahead of the curve or keep you in front of a customer or get your reach out there a little bit farther. And that space is changing. It seems like every year, like it seems like it's always different.
Yeah. And now with AI coming out, it's like, every week I'm wondering what's new, but to tap back into it to budget care that Matt touched on. When budget care came out, so we do a lot of, we have prime customers, we have subprime customers. Unfortunately, a lot of subprime customers with our blenders, they don't want to extend how much they will loan to the customer. So it really didn't offer anything for a subprime customer who wanted to get coverage. There was really no answer for that. In most subprime lenders, you want at least a 24-month, VSC on it. So, they would ask me and I'd say, some companies have a pay out of pocket financing you can kind of do. That wasn't really the answer to it. And finally, when Budget Care came out, it was a nice piece to add to a subprime customer who wanted a contract but wasn't allowed so much on the back end from a lender, and we could fit that right in there, and it was huge. So I mean, that's good for, in so many ways, for someone who needs something and some coverage, and it's great coverage for a good price. And of course, subprime, you're talking about higher interest rates, so the more we add on back end, the higher that payment goes up drastically versus a low APR. So when you tie that in together, price point, and allowing a consumer who might not be able to extend their financing amount that high Budget Care comes in ways that I haven't seen from any other products before. So that's how we use it, and we use it quite often, and it's an amazing product. So that's how it affects us at this dealership. So we love it here.
Budget Care, is another product that I love because it fits that mold like you're talking about, where it's going to give an answer to a customer that previously may not have even got coverage, but then also give you some flexibility, like Matt touched on earlier, where I want to do maybe a better coverage as far as the limits of liability. I want to be able to increase that to NADA, versus a 5,000 aggregate. The ability to custom tailor it to the customer and the situation. If I just need the absolute, least expensive thing I can to make this deal so the customer has some coverage, we can do that. But if we want to increase those levels or give it just a little bit more polish and a little bit more to it, we can do that. And it still doesn't break the bank. And so like Matt touched on, these programs are designed, and thought out ahead of time. And I think they've done a great job, right? Like, I think you guys have put a lot of research into it. It's kind of like that theory for Apple. They're not necessarily the first one to come out with a device, but they think it through and they come out with the best device, right? The most functional. And I'm sure there's a lot of people that'll hate me for saying that Apple's the best device, but you know what I'm saying? Like,
I'm with it. Don't worry, I'm with you. I'll make that argument. I see that green bubble pop up. The first thing I ask is, who is it? Who's doing it?
Right. Yeah, exactly. When the
But
text,
to your point, when Budget Care, the other thing you got to remember is we're a big company, and so I wouldn't say we're the Titanic, but we're never going to sink. But it's a big boat that when you get it turning, it takes a while to turn. And so, unfortunately, in our market space, that's sometimes the case where we launched Budget Care, and within 6 to 8 months, all of our dealer or agents are like, "Hey, this is great. Can you guys add these two variables to this contract to make it just perfect. Absolutely perfect?" And within 3 months, designed, the forms filed in the States, they're approved, and they're launched, and they're implemented. So yes, we're a massive company, and we're, I would say, a technology forward company, but we're also very, very nimble, that if the market space adjusts, we can quickly adjust with that market space and put something out into the market. That's exactly what the dealership and the agents and the consumers are looking for. So that way we can then just better our partnership with our dealer and agent partners.
That's awesome. Now, let me ask you a question. What's ahead for Alpha? Like, what are you guys working on now? You said you have a couple things that are in the works, but what's exciting? What's on the forefront? What have you just rolled out?
Yeah, so we've got, barring Steve giving this podcast a cease and desist, because I'm spilling too much of that secret sauce.
I wasn't saying you have to tell me everything you're working on.
Yeah, we're doing, we're doing some exciting things. If you don't evolve, you die. And so we're constantly do that. So internally, we have some things to where we're wanting to push. We've mastered that second position, which is the biggest variable for almost any first position company. You look at the top companies, they're great at one thing and one thing only, and that's kind of been our niche. Is we stay in this lane. We're specialty risk. That's the lane that we stand in. But we're constantly looking at is, if we mastered this, and this is the hardest position to be in, what does it look like if we want to truly be a first position? And what are some of the other companies doing? What are they not doing? How do we better that experience and tailor-made that experience in that first position, reinsured position? What are some of the unique things that we can do with captives? How can we better that profit, better that ROI back to the dealership, lower some of these smoke and mirror costs that, when I look at some of those first positions and I read a session statement and I'm like, you are paying almost as much as fees as some of your profits you made that year. Yes, your dollar amount goes up, but when you look at that actual interest that you're making and that profit, you're almost paying that in fees. You're almost netting zero. And at that point, you're just throwing premium in every single year, growing year over year. And so that's probably our next thing where, we're very safe, very reserved. We just launched RV this year, and Utah's is big with RV. So we're just launching that, going out there. And we basically took all the top RV dealers and products out there and just said, look, give me your best. What's the best that's out there? We threw that into our proprietary AI system in it. And we basically say, give me the best consumer experience with the best product, got that, and then put our alpha spin on it and launched RV. So we're really excited about RV this year. Is going to be kind of our biggest push for RV. And then I'd say over the next 2 to 3 years, I'd watch Alpha move into that first position arena, just because of that technology piece that a lot of companies are missing. We don't have the name, we haven't been there for, like some of these large companies, but is that what you want? Or if you want the stability and you want the growth, we can show you what Alpha's done with a market space that nobody wants to be in, where high risk, high mile claims. And if we've made a successful business model off of that, what can we do with a business model of brand new inventory or low risk inventory? How much more profitable can we make the dealerships? And so I would say that's probably our long-term 2-3 year goal. But in the very immediately, I am very excited about RV, specifically our exclusionary coverage called Ultimate, and our roadside assistance meets Platinum, American Express Platinum Concierge meets Geek Squad. Put all of that together, and we designed basically a roadside assistance on steroids called.
That's awesome. That's really cool. So I know automotive, I know RV. Is there any hint that there might be a power sports future, or are you guys going any other direction?
There is, yeah. That's believe me, you and a couple other agencies. Alpha crawls before they walk. That being said, we are already working on things behind the scenes so that when we do go to the market, that we can jump on the market quickly. But RV was the first, and then there's some unique things and some unique partners we're looking to kind of finalize at some to get into some other market spaces that make sense to our agent and our dealer partners. But if you have a need, every once in a while there's a new make and a model and a vehicle that comes out there. Again, I can't say this enough, Shane. If you want me to insure DeLoreans with flux capacitors to travel back in time,
Oh man,
give me the ROI and I will build something. I will get it filed in your state. I will put a dollar amount behind it and allow you to have the capability. So if you ever have anything, wants or needs, that's kind of our specialty, is we can put stuff to market that maybe others can't.
yeah,
What's
that's
also
perfect.
unique on that touch there, or touching on that point, is that you guys can also do custom contracts. If you have a vehicle that has, a modification or something like that is just, going to normally exclude it from being able to be covered, we can make a phone call and they'll, Alpha will run it up the risk department. Risk will come back and say, hey, for $200, we'll do this contract and still cover it regardless of this modification, which again comes back to finding a way to make it happen, finding a way to give a solution versus just the big box approach of we can't do it.
One of the big things too about Alpha that I've noticed among other warranty companies that we use is anytime that I talk to Mike about something going on, about an issue a customer has, that is that gray area where we don't know, it could be, but we don't know. I mean, we get answers within 24 hours. I mean, there's other companies I have to call multiple times. Hey, what's going on with this? Oh, we're waiting to hear back. So, the customer's waiting on the dealer to give them an answer, and we're waiting on Mike to get an answer, and Mike's waiting on from an admin. To be able to give the customer, hey, this is what's going on. And again, explaining, yes, this was covered and this is what we're going to do, or no, this wasn't covered, but we can do this option. I mean, that's huge for our consumers, our customers coming in, buying a car. It just makes them feel at ease. And that's huge, getting back to them right away. I mean, give you guys kudos for going up that ladder as fast as you can and coming back down. And we're not a huge dealer here in Tucson. I mean, we've been around for 40 years, but I mean, to have an answer within 24 hours, usually it's within a few hours, is pretty impressive.
I don't know where the sons of automotive go, but if you're working with an admin and they can't get you an answer in a couple of hours, you need to give Elite-Fi a phone call, because 2/3 of our claims are handled in 2 hours or less. And we have what's called an NPS score, Net Promoter Score. So that's Apple, Google, Starbucks, everybody has that. And anything between 70 and 100 is excellent. Anything like 50 to 6 to 70 is good. And then it's like 40 down is bad. And where most companies fit is surprisingly in that 30, 40, 50 range. Our net promoter is anywhere between 77 and 82. And so because of that, even our tough, sticky transmission engines, diesels, even our real sticky claims, we're averaging right now from that's submitted, we got the details, to they're authorized, they can move forward with teardowns. And that's very sticky situation. So if you think 1.8 days on those, if 2/3 of our claims are done in 2 hours or less, how many of those do we have to deal with because we're that efficient?
That's awesome. Well, let me do this, Matt. Let's start to wrap it up. But I wanted to ask you a question. What's one thing that you wish more people knew about Alpha?
Wow, that's a great question. And as you can tell, I didn't get these before to give you that Hail Mary question.
It almost seems like if I had to answer for that, it would be like what we've talked about this whole time: culture, trust, branding the name that someone can put their back behind and know that, you know, even if it isn't covered, they're going to take care of it or find a way, you know, find a solution. They're not just think of it as a dollar sign or a customer number. They're thinking as, well, what's the best way we can do for this customer? And then also, what way can we automate going into further? It's not just, oh, we have these products, use them, don't use them. That's what we have. It's what can we do to fine tune an already great product for a customer to give them and the dealership more. I mean, that's huge. I mean, I'm not even working for Alpha, but I could say probably it seems like the culture and the brand and the trust and just the research that goes into what ways can we become better? How can we, what services can we provide? How can we tweak these things that are already good to be great? And that's what I would kind of how Mike pitched it to me with Alpha. And I, you know, from that point on, I was just kind of blown away with what goes into it.
I don't need to say anything else, do I? That's pretty much it. It's hard. I'm a sales guy. I've been doing this. We're all in sales, and so I mean, I could paint you a pretty picture. I truly say, you know, I look forward to claims. I look forward to that first claim experience. I look forward to that customer experience with our claims process, because that's truly when you sell. And unfortunate in our market, you could start selling an admin, but you truly don't see their colors until sometimes 2 or 3 years down the road. But when that happens, you have so many eggs into that basket that it can be a very nasty breakup. And so I welcome that process and just say, you know, if you don't trust me, go look at our reviews, go look at our 1-star reviews, see how we handle those 1 stars, see how we try to, again, get that to a positive. But just look at our dealer partners, look at our agency partners around, and you know, we work with the top dealer groups, we work with the top dealers in the area, we work with the top agents. Don't take me as a sales guy, don't take my word. Shane, you hit the nail on the head. And if I can get that snippet so we can put it onto our marketing team, because that's truly Alpha. That's truly where we are. And that's what we want to say about ourselves is what we hope dealers and agents are already seeing.
Yep. Well, that's awesome. Matt, I really want to kind of wrap it up because I know we're trying to keep you around an hour. I appreciate you giving us this time talking about Alpha Warranty, talking about your experience. Really awesome to kind of see under the hood, so to speak, of you guys, the administrator, and like the way that you guys think.
Awesome. I appreciate the time. I look forward to round 2, man. Maybe round 2. This is it. Round 2. You will have to make this promise. The second time we do this podcast together, you guys all come out to Utah. Shane, you can see the building, and then we can put the camera on your face, and you can tell me.
Yeah, I'll sell it all.
Did I lie? Did I sugarcoat anything? Or are we just in a little shed behind a Walmart? And that's where we adjudicate all our claims.
Love it. Yeah, let's definitely do that, Mike. We'll make a trip out there and do another one, do round 2.
All right. That's a date. We'll do it.
Awesome.
I appreciate it again, Matt. Thank you for coming on, sharing your time, sharing your information. We appreciate it, brother.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.